Hey guys, welcome back to Fix It Phillip. Thanks for watching. Today we have a 2011 Toyota Tacoma and we're going to do a lift kit today. Customer supplied the parts. We're doing 3-inch spacers for the struts in the front, and we're doing 2-inch spacers for the differential in the rear. So it sits a little bit higher in the rear already, so we're going to try to level it out a little bit and get him some more clearance for his tires. And I'm going to show you guys how to do it. Okay, this is the kit they got for the front. It's for 2-wheel or 4-wheel drive Tacomas 2005 to 2019 6 lug, or a 4Runner 2003 to 2018. And these are the 3 inches for the front. Comes with the bolts. And for the rear we have new U-bolts, which are longer. We have washers here, and then we have the spacers that's going to sit right in between the leaf springs and the rear differential. Okay, so for the front, the spacer is going to go right up here at the top of the strut. So we're going to move the outer tie rod in for some more clearance. We're going to take off the sway bar end link to the spindle here on both sides, and also loosen the upper control arm ball joint. Okay, we're going to take out the cotter pin here for the outer tie rod. Spray this down with some PB Blaster. It's all rusted. We got a 19mm nut for the castle nut here. Screw this on a little bit so we don't damage the threads, because we got a bang on here. Just in case you slip, you don't want to mess up the threads. Okay, now we're going to take off the sway bar end link on both sides that runs through the spindle. We got a 17mm nut here. This one's rusted too. We'll spray a little bit. Now when you loosen this actual ball joint might spin, so there's a little hex right here. You can put an Allen socket, or there's this little metal part right here. I usually just put a vice grip on here, hold it in place. I'll do the same thing on the other side. Okay, we got a bracket here with some 10mm bolts for the ABS wire. I'm going to take those off so we don't jeopardize pulling the ABS wire and breaking it. Okay, now we're going to take off the cotter pin for the upper ball joint. Okay, this one's a 19mm. And just make sure you leave the nut threaded on there, a couple good threads, because once you free it up by banging on this, we don't want the control arm or the spindle to fly off. Okay, I'm going to loosen the spindle on the driver's side, the same exact thing that we're doing here. Once we do that, we can swing this sway bar up and out of the way. Okay, so I got the three 14mm nuts off for the upper strut mount. Now we're just going to take off the bottom bolt here for the strut, which is a 19mm. Okay, now this whole strut can come out. Okay, I'm just gonna clean up the top of this upper strut mount a little bit. Okay, now we can put the spacer on. We're just gonna use the factory 14mm nuts that were on the top of the upper strut mount, and then they come with new bolts where it connects to the actual frame. And we're just going to tighten all these down evenly. Okay, now we can put it back in, and you do exactly the same thing on the other side. So this was the passenger side, same thing on the driver's side. Okay, so make sure that the holes line up with the holes here on the bracket. Make sure you got enough clearance for your brake line and ABS wire. We're gonna pry down on the lower control arm a little bit since this is taller now. We gotta pry down in order to get it in. Okay, so the spacers do come with washers and bolts, so I'm going to leave it loose on the bottom so we can get these started up here. So you can kind of wiggle it around if you have to. Okay, I got the top bolts hand tight. I'm just going to line this up, get the bolt back in. We can tighten this back up. Okay, these new bolts on top are 16mm now. I'll tighten these up. Tighten them up evenly all the way around. Okay, so I got the driver's side on as well. I didn't show you this side because it's exactly the same process. So once you do both sides, before you put it all together, make sure you pull this sway bar back down, because once you try to put the spindle back on, the sway bar is not going to pass that. So make sure you get this down, and then we can put the spindle together. So now that the strut's longer, it's a lot more stress to push down the control arm to connect it to the spindle. So I'm actually going to lower the vehicle down onto these jack stands to the lower control arm to push this up. You can do the same thing too if you're doing this on the floor. Just put jack stands underneath the lower control arm and lower the floor jack to where it's pushing up, and it'll make it a lot easier to connect the upper control arm. Okay, now we can tighten this 19mm nut here for the upper control arm. Put the cotter pin back in. All right. Okay, sway bar end link on both sides. And outer tie rod end. I put a new cotter pin in this one because the other one was super rusty and old. Okay, we can put this ABS wire brackets back on. All right, everything's put back together on the front left and right. Just make sure you tighten up all the ball joints, outer tie rod, upper control arm, sway bar end link, all the ABS wire brackets. Here's the driver's side. Okay, so for the rear, we're gonna disconnect the shock on the bottom. We're gonna take off this bracket for the e-brake cable just so we have a little bit more room, because this rear diff is gonna need to come down in order for us to put this block in between the leaf springs and the rear diff. And we have the longer U-bolts we're gonna put on, and that's what we're gonna do next. Okay, here's the 12mm for the e-brake bracket. Okay, the bottom of the shocks are 17mm. And we're going to use these jacks here to keep the rear diff propped up so it doesn't fall down. Okay, now we're going to remove the nuts for the U-bolts on the driver's side and passenger side. Make sure you have it propped up. See you, Ro. Okay, now we can lower this down so we have enough gap to put the spacers in. Just be careful with the rubber brake lines that you don't pull on those too much. Okay, keep in mind with these spacers, they're not exactly square. One side is actually taller and one side is actually shorter. So the shorter side goes towards the front of the vehicle, the taller side goes towards the rear of the vehicle. Okay, now we can put on our new longer U-bolts. Look what was inside the bracket here. This huge centipede. It's all flattened in there. Nasty. Comes with new washers and nuts. Okay, now we're gonna get these started. These are 22 millimeters now. And when you tighten it up, you want to try to get these studs as even as possible all the way around. And then we're gonna torque it down to 80 foot-pounds. Like I said, just make sure all these are as even as possible. And we'll do the same thing on the other side. Okay, just do that on both sides. We can raise it up. Put the shock back in. Okay, so here's the rears all done. The driver's side and the passenger side. All right, so here's the truck on the ground. That's it for the lift, you guys. So hopefully this helps you guys out, whether you're doing a 2-inch spacer or 3-inch spacer in the front, same concept, same with 2-wheel drive and 4-wheel drive too. So thank you for watching. Be sure to hit that subscribe button below. And remember, with Fix It Phillip, you can fix it. I'll see you next time.